Although Muhammad is credited with bringing monotheism to Arabs, the Quran venerates three distinctively different gods. In the first Meccan period, the god was nameless. He was referenced solely by the title Lord. This deity was modeled after Zayd's god, which is not surprising, since the Meccan Hanif's poems formed the basis of Muhammad's early surahs. The Hanifs derived the title Lord and their faith from the Jews, a people who called their God Lord for fear of saying his name. If they used Yahweh's name incorrectly, they were accused of blasphemy and risked being stoned. While their scriptures contained 7,000 repetitions of his name, rabbis always read and said Adonai in its place. Being illiterate, the Meccans would not have known the difference. But a title was insufficient. The creator God of the universe needed a name. All gods had name, so in the second Meccan period, Muhammad called his Lord Ar Rahman. Inscriptions from the 5th century reveal that Ar Rahman was worshipped in Yemen by another group of Hanifs. We know about them because Dru Nuwas, the Jew Yemeni king, may have been one of them. His exploits were chronicled in Greek, Syriac, and Aramaic. When he attacked the Abyssinian Christians in southern Arabia in the early 6th century, he swore by Ar Rahman, the merciful, and Ar Rahim, the benevolent. An invocation including these gods' names now precedes all but the 9th surah. Muhammad transitioned from Lord to Ar Rahman in surahs 56, 68, 78, and 89, and the last half of surah 93. While none of these mention Allah, Ar Rahman and Lord are used interchangeably, often side by side. The names Ar Rahman and Ar Rahim are used 51 times in the Meccan period and twice in the first Medina surah. Then they disappear, replaced by Allah, never to be mentioned again. This is important because surrounded by a veritable sea of pagan idols, all Muhammad did was whittle down the number. An interesting insight in this regard can be found in Surah 21:36.
When the unbelievers see you, they make fun of you, mocking you, ridiculing you. They say, "Is this the one who mentions your gods?" They would deny all mention of Ar Rahman.
This is a problem on a number of levels. The Quran is saying that Muhammad was being teased because he mentions the Meccan gods. Why? Allah was a Meccan god. And if Islam began monotheistic, why was gods plural? Moreover, by having the Meccans
deny all mention of Ar Rahman,
two things became apparent. Muhammad's God was Ar Rahman, and the Meccans was not. It is interesting that while the Islamic God doesn't seem to know his name, or if he's one, I, me, or my in verse 37, or many, we and us in verse 35, he is the same old guy, showing signs that men don't heed and making threats.
Quran 21 verse 37, Man is made of haste. I,
Ar Rahman,
shall show you my signs. Then you will not ask me to hasten the punishment. If only the unbelievers could apprehend the moment when they would not be able to ward off the fire from their faces and their backs.
The "What's my name" game continued with this Quran passage.
Quran 21 verse 41. Many apostles have been scoffed before you, but they were caught by what they ridiculed. Say, Muhammad, who guards you from Ar Rahman? But at the mention of their Lord they turn away. Or do they have lords of their own besides us who can defend them?
They turned away because the Meccans knew Allah, not Ar Rahman. Surah 25 speaks to the confusion over who the Islamic deity really was. The 59th verse ends with these words,
He is the benevolent.
Left untranslated, that says,
He is Ar Rahim.
Verse 60 begins with this,
When you say to them, Bow before Ar Rahman, they say, What is Ar Rahman? Should we adore whomever you ask us to? And their aversion increases further.
Muhammad was asking the Meccans to prostrate themselves to a god named Ar Rahman. They, however, rebelled, asking,
What is Ar Rahman?
They knew Allah, the top dog of the Kaaba, But not everyone knew the other fellow, as he wasn't a local rock idol. This debate over God's name was hardly academic. Since several gods are named, Islam can't be monotheistic. And since none of the names are Yahweh, they aren't the God of the Bible. Therefore, the biblical prophets and patriarchs should not have been used to justify Islamic rites and rituals. Verse 25:63 confirms that the first Muslims were
slaves of Ar Rahman, who walked in submission,
which is Islam. The end of this verse is foreboding. It says,
when Muslims are addressed by the ignorant, they should reply, peace.
They get away with telling us they're peaceful because we are ignorant of Islam. Koran 13:30 says,
we revealed it to you, but they do not believe in Ar Rahman. Tell them, He is my Lord. There is no other God but He. In Him I have placed my trust.
There isn't any wiggle room here. Ar Rahman is not only synonymous with Muhammad's Lord, Ar Rahman is his God's name. Allah was a nobody. But it wouldn't remain that way. The reconciliation between the Islamic gods Ar Rahman and Allah occurred at the end of the 17th surah. It was a concession on Muhammad's part. So that we don't take that great event out of context, let's sneak up on it. The surah attempts to explain why the Quran was being doled out in increments.
Quran 17, verse 106. We have divided the Quran into parts that you may recite it to men slowly, with deliberation. That is why we send it down by degrees.
Actually, specific verses were revealed in direct response to issues in Muhammad's life. When he wanted to steal, booty was approved. When he wanted to kill, his God approved killing. When he craved incest, his lust was conveniently satisfied. When he wanted more wives than Islam allowed, the Quran provided a special dispensation. And when he wanted to cleanse the world of Jews, his God was accommodating.
Quran 17, verse 107. Say, believe in it or do not believe. Those who were given knowledge before it bow in adoration when it is read out to them. And
they
say, Glory be to our Lord. The promise of our Lord has indeed been fulfilled. And weeping they kneel down. And this increases their submission.
Not only is it out of character, but the beginning of the verse is a lie. Those who were given the knowledge before the Quran refers to the Torah and Gospels, thus to Christians and Jews. They never bowed in adoration when the Quran was read out to them. It couldn't have been read, since it wasn't written, and they laughed themselves silly when they heard it, as we do today.
Quran 17, verse 110. Say, call him Allah, or call him Ar Rahman. Whatever the name you call him, all his names are beautiful.
The name. His name. Thank you, Allah, or Ar Rahman, or whatever your name might be, for confirming the obvious. Neither Allah nor Ar Rahman are words that mean God. They are names of gods. The Arabic word for God is ilah, and it is used throughout the Quran. We can only assume that Muhammad learned about the Hanifs and their god Ar Rahman while he was a caravan merchant frequenting Yemen. Maslama and Zayd, both contemporaries of Muhammad, proclaimed the Hanif doctrine. Maslama could have been Muhammad's twin. He taught a strict moral code that prohibited drinking and fornication. He required fasting and formal ritualistic prayers 3 times a day. Maslama believed in the day of resurrection and encouraged a Hajj. He preached in the same rhyme prose of Muhammad's Quran, and he even called himself the messenger of God, saying his revelations came from Ar Rahman. And whatever Maslama missed, Zayd covered. His poetic lines made their way into the Quran verbatim.